stuff that, a lot of stuff that, like, whatever, like, wasn't really true, because police investigations, there's obviously a lot of lies that get tossed around. Okay, there's a lot of lies. I mean, just because something ends up in the paper and, you know, whatsoever that it's true, because trust me, like documented as fact is actually false. So I don't know if you guys have been paying attention what's been going on south of us in Mississippi over the last week, but two gangs that have roots in Chicago have been tearing the state prisons apart down there, man, and they are on a statewide lockdown right now because I believe 5 people thus far have been killed. Conditions are coming to light, but it has been exposed basically by the gang intelligence units in that state that it is the gangster disciples and the vice lords that are causing the majority of this. So one person who works for the Mississippi Association of Gang Investigators said that myself and others have resources inside the facilities. There are gang members that are contacting us and letting us know what's going on. The gang investigators are a group of cops from all over the state that gather and share information in order to draw a bigger picture of gang activity around the state. They said they've actually warned state officials that this day would come in the prisons. And he says this is a reality. It's happening today. It's been building for about 3 years, and we've talked about it. We've tried to share it. This is not kids playing basketball on the street corner. This is a multi-billion-dollar narcotics business. There have been guards who have given keys to inmates, which allowed them to get other inmates they wanted to attack. They said the fights started with the vice lords and the gangster disciples after, like, you know, the GDs basically retaliated on the vice lords. They were trying to make it seem like the vice lords started it. Now, according to them, the VLs started it, and then the GDs started to retaliate on the VLs. And they said the people who perpetrated this violence will be charged and brought to justice. Gang violence will not be tolerated in state prisons or on our streets. That was according to the governor of Mississippi, Phil Bryant. He said that last Friday. He said it's quite possible the violence isn't over yet. But both the vice lords and the gangster disciples in Mississippi are quote-unquote plugged into Chicago, which means that they receive orders from leadership in Chicago. Now, this is according to these gang investigators, and the extent to which that's true, I'm not sure. I'm not in tune with Mississippi. I know the gangs here don't take orders from anybody. Like the vice lords and the GDs here do not take orders from any leaders, so it's hard for me to envision members from other states taking orders from leaders here if the members here don't take orders from the leaders here, if you know what I mean. But on the other hand, one possible like thing to, you know, give credibility to that story is that I have heard from a lot of active members that there's still structure in the southern states and that they do follow orders from older guys. And that, you know, they would respect like certain leaders who might still be based in Chicago. So that could be true. And also, you know, in prison, obviously there's still a chain of command. So it might be guys who are locked up here who are giving these orders. But they said that any moves must be approved by Chicago because they have that plug, said the investigator. But he said by having that plug, it also gives them backup. So according to the Mississippi Department of Corrections, the last inmate who died was not involved in one of the situations that stemmed from the gang wars. Inmates housed in Unit 29, where the riots took place, have been moved to another unit, so everyone is in a cell now. And that particular employee of the Mississippi Department of Corrections said, I received a briefing today from the Department of Corrections on prison gang violence. Grateful that this violence, any loss of life is tragic and must be addressed. They actually were tweeting that, and they said that there's much work to be done in our correctional system. Until the transition, we will be working to get more information and offering our assistance to the current leadership. So the Department of Public Safety issued a statement on Friday as well. They said the Department of Public Safety will continue to work diligently with the Mississippi Department of Corrections and will provide all available resources in order to bring resolution to the current situation. That was according to the Commissioner Marshall Fisher. Commissioner Hall and I are in communication, he said, regarding the situation and are closely monitoring gang-related issues that could be contributing factors. So investigators say that their goal is simply to stop the killing. They said mainly we need to pray, we need God on our side, we've lost enough life. We don't need to lose any more people in our prisons, and we don't need to lose any of our guards, and we don't need to lose any more of our law enforcement over this. So the names of those killed in the gang war so far are a guy named Kaboom on the streets, okay? He was 36. A guy named Walter, he was 25. A guy named Gregory, he was 26.
Fast tip number 21.
Pizza!
Ha! Nice try, kidnapper!
And an unidentified inmate whose age is unknown. Now, they don't give the affiliations of these guys, okay, to say, like, who...
She's trying to kill that bone. She ain't letting up on that nigga.
Was shopping for you or anything else?
No. Just be ready.
She gave a little excited laugh.
I'll be ready. Aren't I?
Smiling mockingly, saw his... The Godfather by Mario Puzo. Copyright 1969 by Mario Puzo. All rights reserved. Author's dedication for Anthony Clary. Book 1. Behind every great fortune, there's a crime. Balzac. Chapter 1. Amerigo Bonacera sat in New York Criminal Court number 3 and waited for justice, vengeance on the men who had so cruelly hurt his daughter, who had tried to dishonor her. The judge, a formidably heavy-featured man, rolled up the sleeves of his black robe as if to physically chastise the two young men standing before the bench. His face was cold with... Bonacera sensed, but did not yet understand. The judge said,
You acted like the worst kind of degenerates.
Yes, yes, thought Amerigo Bonacera. Animals, animals. The two young men, glossy hair, crew-cut, scrubbed, clean-cut faces composed into humble contrition, bowed their heads in submission. The judge went on.
You acted like wild beasts in a jungle, and you are fortunate you did not sexually molest that poor girl, or I'd put you behind bars for 20 years.
The judge paused. His eyes, beneath impressively thick brows, flickered slyly toward the sallow-faced Amerigo Bonacera, then lowered to a stack of probation reports before him. He frowned and shrugged, as if convinced against his own natural desire. He spoke again.
But because of your youth, your clean records, because of your fine families, and because the law in its majesty does not seek vengeance, I hereby sentence you to 3 years confinement to the penitentiary. Sentence to be suspended.
Only 40 years of professional mourning kept the overwhelming frustration and hatred from showing on Amerigo Bonacera's face. His beautiful young daughter was still in the hospital with her broken jaw wired together. And now, these two animales went free. It had all been a farce. He watched the happy parents cluster around their darling sons. Oh, they were all happy now. They were smiling now. The black bile, sourly bitter, rose in Bonacera's throat, overflowed through tightly clenched teeth. He used his white linen pocket handkerchief and held it against his lips. He was standing, so when the two young men strode freely up the aisle, confident and cool-eyed, smiling, not giving him so much as a glance, he let them pass without saying a word, pressing the fresh linen against his mouth. The parents of the animales were coming by now, 2 men and 2 women his age, but more American in their dress. They glanced at him, shamefaced, yet in their eyes was an odd, triumphant defiance. Out of control, Bonacera leaned forward toward the aisle, the linen at his eyes now.
You will weep as I have wept. I will make you weep as your children make me weep.
The defense attorneys, bringing up the rear, swept their clients forward in a tight little band, enveloping the 2 young men who had started back down the aisle as if to protect their parents. A huge bailiff moved quickly to block the row in which Bonacera stood, but it was not necessary. All his years in America, Amerigo Bonacera had trusted in law and order, and he had prospered thereby. Now, though his brain smoked with hatred, the wild visions of buying a gun and killing the 2 young men jangled the very bones of his skull. Bonacera turned to his still uncomprehending wife and explained to her,
They have made fools of us.
He paused and then made his decision, no longer fearing the cost.
For justice, we must go on our knees to Don Corleone.
In a garishly decorated Los Angeles hotel suite, Johnny Fontaine was as jealously drunk as any ordinary husband. Sprawled on a red couch, he drank straight from the bottle of scotch in his hand, then washed the taste away by dunking his mouth in a crystal bucket of ice cubes and water. It was 4 a.m, and he was spinning drunken fantasies of murdering his trampy wife when she got home, if she ever did come home. It was too late to call his first wife and ask about the kids, and he felt funny about calling any of his friends now that his career was plunging downhill. There had been a time when they would have been delighted, flattered by his calling them at 4 a.m, but now he bored them. He could even smile a little to himself as he thought that on the way up, Johnny Fontaine's troubles had fascinated some of the greatest female stars in America. Gulping at his bottle of scotch, he heard finally his wife's key in the door, but he kept drinking until she walked into the room and stood before him. She was to him so very beautiful, the angelic face, soulful violet eyes, the delicately fragile but perfectly formed body. On the screen, her beauty was magnified, spiritualized. 100 million men all over the world were in love with the face of Margot Ashton and paid to see it on the screen. Johnny Fontaine asked,
Where the hell were you?
Out fucking.
She had misjudged his drunkenness. He sprang over the cocktail table and grabbed her by the throat. But close up to that magical face, the lovely violet eyes, he lost his anger and became helpless again. She made the mistake of smiling mockingly, saw his fist draw back. She screamed,
Johnny, not in the face. I'm making a picture.
She was laughing. He punched her in the stomach, and she fell to the floor. He fell on top of her. He could smell her fragrant breath as she gasped for air. He punched her on the arms and on the thigh muscles of her silky, tanned legs. He beat her as he had beaten snotty, smaller kids long ago when he'd been a tough teenager in New York's Hell's Kitchen. A painful punishment that would leave no lasting disfigurement of loosened teeth or broken nose. But he was not hitting her hard enough. He couldn't, and she was giggling at him. Spread-eagled on the floor, her brocaded gown hitched up above her thighs, she taunted him between giggles.
Come on, stick it in. Stick it in, Johnny. That's what you really want.
Johnny Fontaine got up. He hated the woman on the floor, but her beauty was a magic shield. Margot rolled away and in a dancer's spring was on her feet facing him. She went into a childish, mocking dance and chanted,
Johnny never hurt me. Johnny never hurt me.
Then, almost sadly, with grave beauty, she said,
You poor, silly bastard. Giving me cramps like a kid. Johnny, you always will be a dumb, romantic guinea. You even make love like a kid. You still think screwing is really like those dopey songs you used to sing.
She shook her head.
Poor Johnny. Goodbye, Johnny.
She walked into the bedroom, and he heard her turn the key in the lock. Johnny sat on the floor with his face in his hands. The sick, humiliating despair overwhelmed him. And then the gutter toughness that had helped him survive the jungle of Hollywood made him pick up the phone and call for a car to take him to the airport. There was one person who could save him. He would go back to New York. He would go back to the one man with the power, the wisdom he needed, and the love he still trusted. His godfather, Corleone. The baker, Nazzarini, pudgy and crusty as his great Italian loaves, still dusty with flour, scowled at his wife, his nubile daughter, Catherine, and his baker's helper, Enzo. And was terrified that the scene would make him late reporting back to Governor's Island. One of the many thousands of Italian army prisoners paroled daily to work in the American economy, he lived in constant fear of that parole being revoked. And so, the little comedy being played now was for him a serious business. Nazzarini asked fiercely,
Have you dishonored my family? Have you given my daughter a little package to remember you by? And now that the war is over, and you know America will kick your ass back to your village full of shit in Sicily?
Enzo, a very short, strongly built boy, put his hand over his heart and said almost in tears, yet cleverly,
Padrone, I swear by the Holy Virgin, I have never taken advantage of your kindness. I love your daughter with all respect. I ask for her hand with all respect. I know I have no right, but if they send me back to Italy, I can never come back to America. I will never be able to marry Caterina.
Nazzarini's wife, Filomena, spoke to the point. She said to her pudgy husband,
Stop all this foolishness. You know what you must do. Keep Enzo here. Send him to hide with our cousins in Long Island.
Catherine was weeping. She was already plump, homely, and sprouting a faint mustache. She would never get a husband as handsome as Enzo, never find another man who touched her body in secret places with such respectful love. She screamed at her father,
I'll go and live in Italy. I'll run away if you don't keep Enzo here.
Nazzarini glanced at her shrewdly. She was a hot number, this daughter of his. He had seen her brush her swelling buttocks against Enzo's front when the baker's helper squeezed behind her to fill the counter baskets with hot loaves from the oven. The young rascal's hot loaf would be in her oven, Nazzarini thought lewdly, if proper steps were not taken. Enzo must be kept in America and be made an American citizen. And there was only one man who could arrange such an affair, the godfather, Don Corleone. All of these people and many others received engraved invitations to the wedding of Miss Constanzia Corleone, to be celebrated on the last Saturday in August 1945. The father of the bride, Don Vito Corleone, never forgot his old friends and neighbors, though he himself now lived in a huge house on Long Island. The reception would be held in that house, and the festivities would go on all day. There was no doubt it would be a momentous occasion. The war with the Japanese had just ended, so there would not be any nagging fear for their sons fighting in the army to cloud these festivities. A wedding was just what people needed to show their joy. And so, on that Saturday morning, the friends of Don Corleone streamed out of New York City to do him honor. They bore cream-colored envelopes stuffed with cash as bridal gifts, no checks. Inside each envelope, a card established the identity of the giver and the measure of his respect for the godfather. A respect truly earned. Don Vito Corleone was a man to whom everybody came for help, and never were they disappointed. He made no empty promises, nor the craven excuse that his hands were tied by more powerful forces in the world than himself. It was not necessary that he be your friend. It was not even important that you had no means with which to repay him. Only one thing was required, that you yourself, proclaim your friendship. And then, no matter how poor or powerless the supplicant, Don Corleone would take that man's troubles to his heart, and he would let nothing stand in the way to a solution of that man's woe. His reward? Friendship, the respectful title of Don, and sometimes the more affectionate salutation of Godfather. And perhaps, to show respect only, never for profit, some humble gift, a gallon of homemade wine or a basket of peppered tarales, specially baked to grace his Christmas table. It was understood, it was mere good manners, to proclaim that you were in his debt and that he had the right to call upon you at any time to redeem your debt by some small service. Now, on this great day, his daughter's wedding day, Don Vito Corleone stood in the doorway of his Long Beach home to greet his guests. All of them known, all of them trusted. Many of them owed their good fortune in life to the Don.
Phone gonna die soon. Speaking to my live me folks. I apologize. I appreciate y'all fucking with me. I ain't going to bed. I'm finna listen to this. Book, The Godfather. Try to get my town together and let the phone charge. And when it's charged, I shall be back. So I hope you do return as well. And when you return, man, come back with a suggestion, movie to watch, or book to listen to, or conversation, current world events, old events, whatever, anything. But until then, and regardless, have a blessed evening. Stay blessed, stay safe and healthy. Jim.